Path of Exile just dropped all of the super classes, aka the Ascendancies. These are the classes that you actually want to focus in on when you're choosing your class. Previously, we were talking about which class to go ahead and pick for the best class in the game. However, the main thing that I want to focus in on is kind of the playstyle that you are going for to help you select what's going to essentially be your best class. So let's go ahead and kick it from the top, and I'll give you guys some extra bonus knowledge here. And again, each class is going to have 3 Ascendancies, but there's going to be 2 at the start. And these, by the way, at the moment, they said in an interview that you cannot change these. So make sure you select whatever class that you actually enjoy. So starting right off, these, just to give you guys a quick overview of it, you don't just start off with the Sorceress and then you select Stormweaver. You have to do like kind of a special quest to unlock these super classes, and that's why the reason why I'm calling them super classes. They are called Ascendancies, but these are the main important things that I want to go over, because from a Diablo player's perspective, you might think that well, the Stormweaver, that's a separate class. It is still the Sorceress, but it's like the evolution. Again, the reason why I'm calling it a super class is it kind of makes more sense for some people. But let's go check out what these do and the effects of these, and I can give you guys maybe some recommendations. So for our starters, let's go ahead and go over the Stormweaver, which is for the Sorceress. So starting right off, usually I'd have gameplay to kind of be here side by side, but the game's not out yet. But on top of that, the text is the most important thing to consider. So we have, oh, actually, this is important to go over. So how it works with the Ascendancies is you start off again as a Sorceress, and then when you complete this thing called the Trial of Ascendancy, you're going to be getting 2 points. Now, there are multiple of these that you do. I believe that there is still going to be 4 at the end, meaning that in total, you will get 8 points. But as far as I'm aware of, you can only go for the two sets of 2 points each at the moment. I'm sure that later that will change, but that's, as far as I'm aware of, that's what we have available for us. Because remember, we don't have all of the acts available, which I'm guessing it might be tied to it. Anyways, starting right off, the important thing to take a note is that the first point usually is something small, maybe like 10 to all elemental resistances, or it's like a small node. And then the second point is like the big node, and that's what these are, like the 1, 2, 3, 4s. And this is like the important stuff. So hopefully that kind of makes some sense. So basically, when you do your Ascendancy, you get 2 points. One of the points is basically a path towards the next point. You cannot get all of these. These are like special, again, super class points that you get after doing the Ascendancy trial. So for starters, the position of these don't really matter. In fact, we don't really need this little circle here. It's just kind of cool for like artwork, but what we are interested in is the actual effects of all of the bigger nodes. That's the only thing that's showing up. It doesn't show the small nodes. Most of the time, again, it's like 10 elemental resistance, 10 damage. It doesn't really matter. But for starters, Scouring Winds is the first one. It says exposure you inflict lowers the affected resistance by an additional 20%. So what exposure is, it may be another skill that you may have to activate. You may have the ability to automatically apply exposure based on whatever condition, but it just lowers their resistance by an additional 20. So that pretty much should be 20% more damage, unless there are certain pinnacle bosses that aren't affected by like curses or other forms of like debuffs the same way as other enemies. But basically, I want to say you can almost think this of maybe like 20% more damage. Again, there are some other conditions, but for the most part, just more damage here. And then we have Tempest Caller, which is going to grant you Elemental Storm, which we actually got to read because it's something that I've not seen before. So it creates a stationary cold fire lightning storm at a location for a duration based on the highest elemental damage type for the hit that trigger the storm. Hits which do not deal elemental damage will not trigger the storm. So it seems like it's basically kind of like is this like a bootleg Hydrosphere? I don't know how many times it can actually like tick, because it's a stationary one. And I don't know if this works the way like Hydrosphere used to work. Basically, it's another thing that exists, and if you can hit it, it's a stationary. I'm guessing it does damage itself. I don't know. Again, how fast can it be triggered per second? That's actually important to consider. So it's really too hard to say if this is going to be OP or not. But it triggers on critical hit with spells. So it depends on how much this does for damage to really give you guys an idea on how good it can potentially be. But there could be certain things where it's like based on how many other like effects the enemy is affected by. Like you can chill the enemies to slow them. If you shock them, they'll take more damage. Or if you ignite them, they will take like fire damage over time. So there are certain things that can help out with this. I don't know if that's what it's used for, because I can't tell you if it's good or not until we see how much damage it actually does. So we have Elemental Storm has a cooldown recovery rate. Oh, so it actually has some internal cooldown, I'm guessing. unless that's the ticks. And then we have heavy snows. So targets can be affected by 2 of your chills at the same time. Your chills can reduce the action speed by up to a maximum of 35%, and they have 25% less magnitude of chill you inflict. And then we have Shaper Winter, so all damage from hits contributes to chill magnitude. Then we have Strike Twice. Targets can be affected by 2 of your shocks at the same time. We have 50% less shock duration. This one could be actually pretty dang big for damage, considering you can get like perhaps shock effectiveness. I think if you're really looking for damage, this could be something to really consider. And then we have Shaper Storm. All damage from hits contributes to shock chance, so you can still... how it works is only lightning damage for the most part can shock. It usually will shock off of crit or your shock chance. However, now you can make it so all your damage can shock. And then you have Arcane Surge. It's a small boost. You can get this in other ways. I wouldn't really consider this even something to think about. Keep in mind, everything that I'm mentioning, like when I'm giving you guys these bonus tips, I'm giving you guys from the viewpoint of a PoE 1 player. There are going to be things that are going to be different. There could be uniques that don't exist or do exist that will crossover. Like Quill Rain exists in PoE 2, but they haven't revealed all the uniques. So as far as I'm aware of that, Arcane Surge, you can get it somewhere else. Don't even worry about that. It just gives you a little bit more cast speed and some mana regen. But there's so many other sources of getting it. Anyways, Heart of the Storm, 40% of elemental damage taken recouped as energy shield. So what recoup means is when you take damage, it will recover it, whatever the amount. So 40% of the damage that you take is regenerated as energy shield. But you have to make sure you have the energy shield, otherwise it's not going to work. So you'll still have to like kind of invest into it. But as far as this goes, this could be a class if you like to do damage, I would say. I mean, every class in PoE does damage for the most part. There are certain things like aura bots, which I don't know if they're going to exist in PoE 2. Anyways, yeah, as far as that one goes, we'll talk more about like my recommendation. I haven't seen all of these yet because it's brand new. This just came out. So next up over here, we have the Chronomancer. So this is still part of the Sorceress, so you get to basically select one or the other. Again, this is a permanent change, but I'm sure later that will change. But again, now it's important to just select the best one. And then, so we have, skills have a 33% chance to not consume a cooldown when used. It depends on what build that you're going for, right? That would definitely matter. And then we have a granted skill over here. So it manipulates times resetting the cooldowns of your other skills. Oh, so this is all about cooldowns. Okay, so we have a time freeze, so it freezes everything. The thing that I'm really curious to know is if this works for bosses, because if the time freeze doesn't freeze the boss, then I feel like that it loses out on a lot of value. Generally with PoE, you can blast with a lot of builds, but it's like the boss that becomes quite difficult, and if you don't have any value on your Ascendancy versus the boss, not going to be looking too hot. Then we have Temporal Rift. It leaves the after image, cast a spell to return to your old after image. Okay, so basically think of like Tracer if you've ever played Overwatch, because it resets your life, mana, and energy shield. But what's interesting with this is you could do some cool stuff with like some mana stacking potentially. Like there are builds where like you would build up all of these things. It doesn't say that you get to keep your power chargers, because there are certain really weird builds in the game where you would do all of these like check marks to like get this, and then you get all of your damage up, and then you expend it all at once. Now, if I can go back and then reset and then do it again, maybe you can do like a quick combo on a boss. And then this one over here, Quicksand Hourglass, every 12 seconds we gain 50% more cast speed for 4 seconds. So that's basically up like a third of the time. And then enemies in your presence are slowed, and then we have 30% of damage taken recouped, and recouped effects instead occur over 4 seconds. This one has some crazy potential, but this one is all based on like a really complex builds, I would say, that are more catered towards advanced PoE players. I'm not going to say it's like a bad build, but for general playstyle, I would probably not recommend this one over here. I would say if I was to choose a Ascendancy that I could recommend for people, because I want to use this video kind of as a guide to which class is kind of like the one that I could recommend for you to be the best class. I'd say Stormweaver out of the Sorceress is going to be my recommendation for beginners. Again, there's probably going to be some crazy Streamer Beard Chronomancer. I know it will happen, but it might not be very beginner friendly. All right, so for the Warrior, dude, Warbringer is absolutely insane. So we're going to start off with Titan. So the Warrior Ascendancies, we have extra armor from body armor. Armor in this game will prevent physical damage, which is actually a pretty nice thing to have. And then we also have every second slam skill you use yourself is ancestrally boosted, and what I like right here is that tells us what that is. An ancestrally boosted skill has 20% more damage and area of effect, so that's pretty cool. So it's like basically up half the time, so it's basically 10% more damage, but it also gets increased area effect, which could technically allow it for more damage if you have like these overlaps on certain skills. But I've noticed in PoE 2, a lot of the numbers is like 10% 30% more, versus in PoE 1, a lot of them were like 20 to 30% more damage. Some of them had like some downside with like Berserker or something, but for the most part, like the numbers are a lot lower in this game when you compare it to PoE 1. And then we have Colossal Capacity. It gives you extra inventory slots. I mean, I could care less for this. I want to do damage or have extra survivability. We also have Hulking Form, so you get increased effect of small passives. There's actually another one that I think if you really want to be an attribute stacker, unless some of the small passives can give you some really crazy effects, this could be something to consider, though. I wouldn't sign this out as like completely terrible, especially if you get some, I don't know if they're going to have the keystone, not keystones, the timeless stones, but this could be pretty interesting. And then all your hits are Crushing Blows, so this is different than Diablo. Crushing Blows causes heavy stun on enemies that are primed for a stun. So if you're interested in doing like some two-handed stun hammers, I'd say this is probably the one to go for, the Titan. You have 40% more damage against heavy stunned enemies, so that's a big chunk of damage. Compared to everything else, this is massive. I want to say the bosses, you're still going to have to build up that stacker bar, but with PoE, it's such a unique game where there could be something that says specifically all hits are treated against enemies as stunned. Now, that would be a huge increase in DPS. Like I said, most of the numbers in this game are like 10%. For like nodes. Obviously, if this is conditional, the more conditional it is, the more damage it should deal. And then we have just a 15% more life, and life in PoE 2 is not as easy as to get. And then we also have Earthbreaker, which says 20% chance for your slam skills you use yourself to cause aftershocks. So aftershocks are bursts of area damage that occur after the initial impact, if not otherwise specified. So you get like a damage, and then it gets to deal the same amount of damage. So you get to do 20% more damage. Remember, every second one is going to be a ancestral. So that would be kind of cool. So if you'd like to do stuns and run like two-handeds, I would say that is probably going to be your go-to. If you want to be like a stun build. And then we also have Warbringer, which I want to say this is probably what I would recommend. And let's go over it. So first off, the break armor equal to 10% of the damage dealt, so you can reduce the enemy's armor. Obviously, in the earlier stages, the enemies probably won't have as much, but as you get further along, I would say this probably has good scaling because, well, it's 10% of the damage you deal, so it's always going to be relevant. There's an interesting item. I don't know if it's going to transfer over, called Ceaseless Feast, which you can also apply negative armor to the enemy. So if you're interested in doing physical damage, this could be something to consider. And then this is a class that I could really recommend for people that may be brand new to the game and kind of want like a Souls-like experience, because PoE is a pretty difficult game, especially in the bosses. Like, you have to learn the mechanics. However, there are certain mechanics that are incredibly hard to learn. Specifically, there's one called the Maven, and it's like a memory game, and you have to like play it, and it's like really annoying, to be honest. But this one's going to grant the Encased in Jade. It's kind of like the Zanya's Hourglass if you've ever played League of Legends. So what it does, they showed off gameplay of it, but it says it absorbs all damage, but it says up to a maximum based on the amount of Jade consumed. Well, in case you can't perform action. So basically, you make yourself encased in Jade, and you can't move or anything, but it says that it absorbs all damage. So as long as you can prevent some of the one-shots from the boss, I think this could be a really good recommendation for beginners. When you see like a giant boss charging up and you don't know where to move, this is going to be a really relevant thing, and I could probably recommend this class for sure. And then this one over here says you can break an enemy armor at below 0, so you can apply negative, which is really cool. And then we have grants the skill Ancestral Spirits. So it says trigger Ancestral Spirits when you summon a totem. So a totem, what that is kind of like a pet, but it doesn't move. It just kind of stays still. Now, technically, there are ones that can like jump, and there's like interesting things that you can do with the totem. But for the most part, think of them kind of as stationary little turrets that shoot out or something. But they can also apply debuffs. But so each of your totems will summon an Ancestral Spirit minion to fight for you. If the totem that summoned the minion dies, then the Ancestral Spirit will die too. And then we have Wooden Wall, 20% of the damage taken from hits from your nearest totem's life before use. So that's going to be nice. It could basically have 20% damage reduction. And then we have Renelli's Training, which lets you gain 40% base chance to block from equipped shield instead of the shield's value. Okay, so that could be interesting if you're interested in blocking. Then we have Turtle Charm, which I actually thought was really interesting. So there is a big downside of you have 35% less chance to block. Now, as far as I'm aware, block does not work the same as PoE 1. So in PoE 1, you could just get block, and whatever your block chance was, I believe it was like 70 or something. 75 was there is a maximum block. I believe you can't get 100. You can maybe go to like 85, but you could not get 100% block. Now, what this allows you to do is that you have you have less block chance. So you're going to have to get your block chance really high. But it says can block damage from all hits while shield is not raised. In PoE 2, as far as I'm aware of, you have to push the shield button. And it has kind of like a durability. Once the durability goes all the way up, I believe your character is stunned. So as far as this goes, if you can get this up high enough, like you're going to need a lot more block. But if block just prevents all of the damage that you take, I mean, this is pretty massive. Again, it's going to be a hefty investment because maybe you only have 35% block chance at the start, right? And that means you have 0 block chance. But every single block chance that you get, you're getting that chance to just not take any damage. It has to be just like a dodge or evading the actual damage. I think that this would be a huge area for survivability, as well as that ability to turn yourself into Jade. So if you want like a really tanky class, I could really recommend this class. And then we have War Callers below. So it says corpses in your presence explode when you war cry, dealing a percent of the damage as physical damage. So if there is a corpse, you can keep on spamming. This could be very interesting because the other thing that works really well with this is you get to ignore war cry cooldowns. And there's also one where, well, I don't know if it exists in PoE 2, but there's a node that you get in the tree where the war cries have no animations. So if you wanted to, you could just spam one button, and as long as you kill one enemy, it just keeps on popping. I think this is a really, really good class. Like, without any doubt in my head, if I was to recommend what warrior ascendancy would be better to choose, oh, no doubt at all, Warbringer would be my recommendation. Again, the other one isn't like terrible if you want to do slams. It has survivability, but there's way more scaling with this one when you have like that block chance too, and then that Jade stuff is going to be key for bosses, especially when you remember, as far as we're aware of, the maps are only like a one time. Like if you rip on it, especially on the boss, yeah, it's going to be kind of rough. All right, here's the class that I am going to be starting off with more than likely, which is going to be the Deadeye. So it's basically a ranged build. So for starters, we have 30% chance that if you would gain frenzy charges, you instead gain up to your maximum number of frenzy charges. This is incredibly powerful. I was originally going to try to mix in like Flicker Strike because it's one of my favorite things, but it uses power charges now, but there's probably a conversion of like frenzy power charges can be gained at the same time. So like this could still be used if you want to do like a Flicker Strike build, but there could be some good plays with Monk as well, which we'll talk about. So then there's Thrilling Chase. Oh, by the way, this is for the, I should went over this, but this is for the Ranger, the Rogue class, whatever. Anyways, the Thrilling Chase benefits from consuming frenzy charges for your skills have a 50% chance to be doubled. So again, it revolves around frenzy charges. And then you have no accuracy at penalty. Accuracy is your chance to actually hit the enemy. So if at distance, you don't have to get any, like, dexterity is what usually contributes to it. But for the most part, you're going to get crit. I don't know if the aura precision exists in PoE 2, but let's say it does, and you really don't need it. This is kind of a skip, to be honest, because you're going to have enough accuracy because you're going to be dex based, right? But it's not useless. But I would say it's not something I'd be like, oh man, I can't wait to get Eagle Eyes, right? We have Point Blank and Far Shot. These are kind of like similar in a sense. So they both do the same number, so it's up to 20% more damage, but it's on a condition. So with Point Blank, you do more damage at close areas, and then so it's up to 20% more damage within the first 3.5 meters, and then it goes to 0. So it doesn't mean you actually deal 0 damage, it's just the projectiles deal that 20% more goes to 0. And then Far Shot is basically the opposite. So you will deal 0% more damage, and then for the first 3.5 meters, and then after 7 meters, you will be able to get 20% more damage. I'd probably recommend Far Shot. I like it a lot, especially for beginner players. You usually want to stay away from the enemies. So yeah, great stuff. And then there's Endless Munitions. This used to be like 2 projectiles. So again, a lot of the numbers kind of got reduced in PoE 2. But this is excellent. This could be double damage in some circumstances without getting too complex. And there are some skills that can what's called shotgun, which means that if there are enemies right here and I shoot 2, it will register. But there's a lot of skills where like it can only be hit by the skill 1 time. There are other things where it can return, it can hit other targets, and then they can do like AoE and red. There's a lot of play with this. I like this a lot. This is probably going to be like the main reason why some people select it is projectiles are a very expensive thing to get in the game. It's a very rare thing. And then we also have Gathering Winds, which gives you Tailwind. Tailwind gives you action speed, but now they call it something else. It's above, which gives you increased movement speed, and the call it increased skill speed, and then it gives you also increased evasion rating. Now, whenever you get hit, you lose all of the Tailwind stacks. Now, I don't know if it's going to exist in PoE 2, but in PoE 1, you could just get Tailwind on your boots. Tailwind Onslaught boots are kind of one of the most expensive things in the boot category, but it is something that you can actually build without requiring it. But it still is a pretty good thing, considering it gives you survivability, and it gives you damage, and it gives you movement speed. I mean, this is like another good reason why I personally really like the class. It makes the class feel really fast. We have Wind Ward, which makes you take 3% less damage per Tailwind. Remember, you get 10 stacks. So this would give you 10% movement speed, 30% increased skill speed, which I believe is going to be like your casting speed, your attack speed. And then you also get 15% increased evasion rating. So this really stacks your stats up. And then you also have Wind Ward, which is going to give you 3% less damage taken per Tailwind if you want to get it. I think most people will skip bet on this, to be honest. And then we have Called Shots, which allows you to apply additional mark. So this one is actually something I would consider. A mark is basically, think of it kind of like a debuff on the enemy that can give you extra charges, it can give you extra damage, extra like split projectiles. It's pretty dang good. I like this a lot. Before it would give you like up to I think 75% of your mark, but now applying another mark, I don't know how it's going to work in the game, but I think that this has definitely some potential to be pretty good. Now, like, if you are newer to the game, honestly, this one might not be that bad in the earlier stages for bossing, but for the most part, when people build bow, they usually build it for, like, speedrunning maps, and they're just, like, bow is one of the fastest classes in the game by a long shot, unless you count, like, certain things like running Headhunter, Mage Bloods, but, like, I don't even know if those are going to be, like, available, and those items are, like, very expensive. I think bow is going to be really, really strong. So, as far as this class goes, I could easily recommend this. Like I said, this is probably what I'm going to be starting off with. I actually think bow is relatively beginner friendly, and it is usually wielded by some of the best PoE players that are like incredible like farmers when it comes to like just efficiency. Bow is incredibly fast. So like I said, it's good for beginners and I would say more advanced players in the game. So this is what I would recommend if you wanted to play the Ranger. There's also the Pathfinder. I was checking out this because I was seeing what else was good. Like you get extra flash charges, but remember, you only have 2 flasks in the game, so that becomes significantly less valuable, right? There's also, I know my face might be blocking it, but it says life flasks are not removed when unreserved life is filled. Life flask effects do not queue. The most damaging poison on enemies you kill is spread, and then double the number of poison you can inflict on enemies, and it's 35% less poison duration. As far as I'm aware of, it was like 2 stacks of poison is all you can apply now. In PoE 1, you could just, poison went infinitely. Ignite was different, unless you had extra bonus Ignite stacks, but this over here, yeah, it could be good. If you want to make a poison build, I could see this. And then they have these concoctions, so this lets you throw, it says it consumes charges from your mana flask, throws a like poison concoction, and then that does chaos damage, and then it also it says poison inflicted by the skill has more effect. It's going to be kind of hard to determine like how much effect this is, but this applies the exposure, which gives them like negative resistances, and then it can also, like, they have a bigger chance to be shocked, they can have a bigger chance to get like chilled or whatever, chilled application. It's kind of the same. So these are just basically different damage types. So if you want to make a build around this, you got to select this class. I thought this one was kind of interesting, granting 5 passive points. This could be actually pretty dang big, reaching extra nodes, but without seeing the skill tree, it's hard to determine. Again, when you compare it to having an additional projectile, that is like, it's so hard to give that up, because I'm guessing on the tree that this is going to be even more rare. Now, this is the main reason why I would actually select the Ranger. That and Tailwind are really good. If you can get additional projectiles, I can get 2 additional ones on your bow. I don't know what exists in the game, considering that they cut that in half. I'm assuming they're making it more rare, but if you can also get Tailwind, then obviously that class would lose potentially some power, but again, depending on what skill you're playing, additional projectile is just straight up like double your damage. It is big, especially if you get like your projectiles to return. I don't know if Nimbus is going to exist in the game, which is like a ring that can make projectiles return, basically gives you incredible more damage. But then there's 30% less movement speed penalty while using skills while moving. So in PoE 2, you can attack and move at the same time, which is actually pretty dang cool. But with this, it might make the game feel a little bit better. I would say 6 and 7 are the things that I enjoy with it. But if you want to play a concoction build, then you do need that. Next up, though, the Witch. So I think we have just 2. Okay, we have 6 more to check out. Wow, this is actually a pretty long video. You know what I want to do, just so this video isn't like an hour long, because we still have a lot, I'm going to make this like a part 2. So anyways, hope you guys enjoyed part 1 of all the ascendancies and super classes, plus some extra bonus tips. But yeah, there's going to be the end of part 1. In part 2, we're going to be checking out the Witch, the Mercenary, and the Monk. But if you guys enjoyed it, drop a like on it. If you want to see the the second part, subscribe, turn that bell, or follow if you're watching this on TikTok, and you guys will see it very soon. I'm literally just going to record it right now. But man, so much knowledge and so much like extra things to take into consideration. But anyways, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.